G'day Mindstars, Aaron here and welcome to Unpack, the show about life. Unpack is about raw, honest conversations with people from all walks of life as they tell their remarkable stories of well-being and resilience. And very happy today to have with us Mikey Ellis, who is the head of culture at Vinomofo. G'day Mikey, good to see you again.
Good to have you back.
Thank you.
At Mofo HQ.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Why don't we start with, for those people who don't know a lot about the amazing story of Vinomofo, do you want to just give us a bit of a background on what it's all about?
Yeah, sure. So Vinomofo, we are an online wine retailer. We buy wine directly from producers that we love and sell directly to our customers who have anointed themselves as mofos. We refer to our tribe of customers as mofos. Yep. Essentially, we buy wine we love and we sell it to our customers. It started in 2011. Yep. Out of a garage, as most sort of good startup stories do. Love it. Two brothers-in-law, Justin Dry and Andre Eichmeyer, in 2011, and it blew up pretty quickly. The guys had established a great network and a great platform of engaged people in the wine industry, and not wine industry professionals, not just wine industry professionals, but consumers. Yeah. You know, just your average wine drinker who related to how they communicated about wine. Yep. Through a couple of other businesses that they'd established prior to Vinomofo. Mm-hmm. Then when Vinomofo launched and they started selling wine, they had this really great and enthusiastic, engaged audience ready to get involved, and it blew up sort of pretty quickly. And
it's one of the great Australian startup stories, I think, for me, you know, and because they've also raised millions, haven't they, over time? They've, you know, it's been a great success.
It has been a great success. It was, you know, it's a combination of, you know, great timings, really hard work, and some really, you know, some good entrepreneurial smarts. Yep. From the guys, and you know, we've got a solid team of people who, you know, are very good at what they do, and I guess with an attitude of just sharing what we love, which is, it's not just wine, but it's all the things that come along with, you know, with drinking wine. It's the lifestyle that goes with it. So yeah, it's been a great business success, and it's been you know, a pleasure to be involved in.
You guys do a unique business here. Do you see any linkages, or, you know, how does the wine culture and human behaviour? Do you see some connections that way?
Yeah, definitely. One certainly influences the other all of the time. You know, I think for me, it's not just about wine as a product that's, you know, bottled. Yep. It's so much more than that. It's the place in which it came from. It's the philosophy and the intent of the winemaker to express either the place or a style that they're, you know, wanting to share. There's a lot that goes into a bottle of wine, if you choose to look at it that way. Then there's the way in which we consume it. You know, typically it's shared, you know, with people you care about. You know, most likely, you know, a special occasion. It could just be, you know, Wednesday dinner. But typically it's with people that you want to, you know, be around. And so it's, I don't know, it's a real conduit for connection. And it's stories. It's stories of the people and the places that made it. It's a story of where you bought it from, and how you acquired it, that time you visited the cellar door, and then it's the stories that you create and tell, you know, as you're drinking it. And that's how I got involved in it in the first place, you know, and that's why there's such a connection for me. You know, I wanted to learn about wine, and I went, you know, I read some books and did some courses, but you know, I learned predominantly through my dad. You know, he was involved in the wine industry in WA in the 70s and 80s, and he knew a bit about wine. So I'd say, let's go out for dinner. You bring along a bottle of wine, I'll pay for dinner, and we'll sit and have a chat, and we can talk about the wine. You know, and interestingly, this was a great lesson for me on the power and the opportunity of a bottle of wine to connect people. So through that experience, I learned about wine, but I learned a lot more about him than I did about the wine. learn about, because we got talking,
Yeah.
you know, not just about the wine, but about him and me, and we connected in a way that we hadn't done before.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, was 15, 20 years ago. And it's a tradition that we carry on now. And it's been the same with just about everybody I share a bottle of wine with. You always find out something about them that you just wouldn't have known otherwise. In an age where everything is so, you know, disposable and quick to consume, you know, wine, I think, is one of those things, like good relationships, that get better, you know, over time. And when you combine the two, it's a real pleasure to be able to share, you know, good wine in good company.
You're head of culture. What are you working on at the moment, or how's your role evolved, or what's it you know, day to day? What are you doing?
How's it evolved? It started out with me learning a lot about what, you know, company culture is. I came in, I was involved in the company right from the early days as a contributor of content. You know, I was writing some reviews of wines for the site. And then when I came on board full time, it was, you know, I saw an opportunity for us to take what was already a great culture. This was almost 4 years ago. Take what was a great culture and try and leverage that so that it was sustainable over time and throughout, you know, future and further growth. So for me, it involved a lot of learning, a lot of applying things that, you know, I was relatively unfamiliar with. It's really it's such a diverse role.
Yeah.
You know, effectively anything to do with people that happens within our company is something that I'm one way or another involved in.
Yeah.
From a operational point of view, but also from a strategic perspective as well. So now we're coming towards the end of the year. This is like literally today at 10 a.m. our engagement survey went out. We do that on an annual basis, and that'll provide some good data for us to look at and go, okay, what's working with regards to our people practices and the kind of culture we want to build. That'll give us some quantitative data to reference. So it's diverse, and that's one of the things I love about it.
Yeah, and I think different. You're going to have challenges as a head of culture, head of people with a fast-growing startup, but have its challenges. But you know, Unpack's very much about, you know, talking about well-being and resilience, and so, you know, in that role. But for yourself, what does well-being mean to you? And you know, how do you actually introduce that, or how's that a part of your life?
Personally, well-being is, for me, primarily it's about self-awareness. For me, it's about knowing what I need, knowing how I react to certain situations, and just having an awareness of that. That's probably the most important thing for me as a foundation. It's something that I've been interested in and involved in, and I guess, you know, aware of and practicing for most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, there's that self-awareness of what's working and what's not, and then there's the application of that. And for me, the pillars, the basic fundamentals for me are exercise, meditation, and appreciation or gratitude. They're of all the things that I've tried and all the things that I do, they're the foundations. And I can do nothing else, and so long as I keep those three practices up on a daily basis, then I'm in a pretty good spot. And that's the self-awareness has just come from knowing that's what works for me.
Love that simplicity. You know, that's those pillars. You know, the minimum you need to do.
Keep coming back to the simplicity of that. It's such a complex experience, you know, being a human being, let alone one that's, you know, sort of takes responsibility for the well-being or the provision of kind of resources within a workplace for the well-being of others. It gets really complicated and complex, and for me, it's just a case of bringing it back to those fundamentals. Otherwise, it just becomes overwhelming.
Was there a time in your life when you had to focus on the well-being, or you weren't focused on well-being, or was it a time that you were struggling in that area?
Yeah, for sure. I've always been. I like to think of myself as a seeker. Someone who's always been asking questions. I was sort of thinking about this the other day. I remember, at school, I'd always, I was sporty and I was always involved in sport. But then there'd be times where I'd spend the afternoon, after school in the library, just kind of reading about stuff. But it was always the books on sort of supernatural and paranormal and stuff that kind of really, really engaged me. And so I've always been asking questions and trying to reconcile my experience of life with what others are experiencing or what I'm learning about others' experience. And so that kind of quest for meaning has been something that's very much been a part of my life since I was pretty young. And there was a time where I was really disconnected from that, in my 20s and into my early 30s. I was really, really disconnected from how I feel and actively would avoid feeling. And was pretty self-destructive with it, with a lot of behaviours, and so that for me was a turmoil, and I understood what was going on, but it was just felt really hard to I guess address that in a way that was healthy. So,
what did that look like? What was it like being in that space? Because I think I'm thinking of people watching this who are in that space.
Yeah.
What was that like, and what the people around you, what would they have seen, or how were they involved? And
it's a good question. It's really interesting. My way of regulating my emotions was to eat, and then purge. So I was, I sort of dealt with bulimia for a long time.
Okay.
And it's such an insidious, I don't know what you call it. For me, it was, it wasn't an affliction or a disease. It was just it was a behaviour. For me, it was a place where it was really easy to hide. So nobody noticed, and I was able to get away with it in as much as I was able to live a normal life and do everything I would normally be doing otherwise. But my way of kind of regulating my emotions was just to kind of eat. And avoid, kind of feeling. And so what that looked like for other people, for those that, for the majority of people in my life, they just would never have known. And it was a very secretive type of thing. I think as most addictions are, there's a sense of, secrecy that's necessary in order to kind of keep it, perpetuated. So, there was a time where I would, with my partners at the time and my family, there was a time when I sort of told them what was going on as a bit of a cry for help, but for the majority of the time it was something that nobody knew about. And
it's amazing, isn't it? And
yeah,
it's not spoken about. I've worked with a bunch of men, boys who have different eating disorders, and it's just not spoken about, and then numbers are increasing. So I really appreciate your honesty talking about it, and I wasn't aware of that. I think it's something that often goes unspoken about. So for people who might be watching, what was the emotional? Obviously, it sounds like avoidance and control, but there's an element, there is an element of shame or stigma around that too, isn't there, for blokes often?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, talking about it now really is the purpose is just to highlight, if nothing else, that everybody's got something going on. And if, I just want to normalise the fact that people have got shit going on, right? Life shit, life stuff. And that's normal. Whether the addiction is to food, to alcohol, to gambling, to being an asshole and not being able to regulate your emotions and being angry, or whatever it is. You just can't deal with something unless you acknowledge it. And so for me, it was, that I think this addictions thrive in secrecy, and the more alone and isolated we feel, the easier it is just to keep like the ego just feeds on that, and I just think it's really hard to, you know, to break a cycle or a pattern from within that place.
Yep.
And so just normalising talking about shit that we, you know, all deal with in different ways.
Yeah.
I think is the most important thing. And so, you know, at the time, you know, this was sort of pre kind of internet. I mean, the internet was kind of a thing, but you just didn't have access to resources or conversations or support in the way in which we do now. So I remember going to you know, psychiatrists or psychologists, and, you know, just kind of dipping my toe in terms of talking about what was going on, and it just was such a sort of clinical disconnected response.
Yeah.
And I remember being prescribed some antidepressants, and I'm like, it's kind of not really the kind of the support I was looking for, or the solution I was hoping for. I know what the problem is. I just need some help in, you know, or you know, I need some resources to deal with it, not something to kind of mask those issues. So, you know, I think the more we can just normalise what we all go through, I think the better we all are.
Agree, 1,000%. And so how did you get, I'm fascinated with you know, knowing you, and as a self-aware, successful, you know, very grounded man, how did you go from that kind of secrecy to reaching out and connecting, and that, what was that journey? Where did that start?
It was a long one, and it wasn't a turning point. It wasn't a, you know, light bulb moment. It wasn't a, you know, a crisis or anything like that. That kind of flipped the script. Instead, it was just this ongoing, like, this has got to stop. I just knew what I was missing out on. And so there was these two experiences I was having. One which was so connected and so grounded and so, you know, so kind of real. And then there was this old kind of conditioned thinking and way of dealing with things that just didn't fit anymore. And so it just became this, you know, this growing kind of discord and disconnect between old behaviour and kind of what I felt was like really, you know, kind of real. And so over time it just became, you know, I got help, and I, you know, connected with other you know, with men's groups, and I did a lot of work in men's health and wellbeing, you know, as a participant, and also facilitating, you know, some of those workshops and conversations, and it just became something that, you know, I overcame just through a desire for just to live more, you know, kind of honestly, with more integrity and with more authenticity, because I felt like everything that I was, you know, and I guess learning a lot too really helped, just understanding ego and how it works, and understanding human behaviour, and understanding my patterns of conditioning, and how, like, for me that's really important to find out why things are happening. So the more I learned, the more I was able to apply what I was learning to, you know, my experience. So
it sounds like a process of helping others, but also helping yourself at the same
totally.
time. And talk some more about ego. What are your thoughts, or, you know, how did ego, how does it play a part?
For me, I see it as light and shade, love and fear being the sort of the dichotomy. And, you know, I referred to the fact I was having these wonderful experiences of just being really connected, you know, experiences of connection to myself, to others, to the world around us, you know, connection, which I think is so important. But then there was this counter to that, which was like, you know, it's like it's the voice in your head that tells stories. Which I then started to question, like, who is telling this story, and what is it, and is it true? And so there was always two storytellers, or there was always two sides to the story, and I kind of, one felt right, which was, the kind of experiences that I was having, being really connected to something. And then there was this other, I call it ego. It's just the fear of like being happy or connected, or fear of love, and it just was for me, it's just this undoing of all this conditioning that I took for granted as being, that's just kind of who I am and how things are. And so ego for me is this, the voice of the mind that is, telling stories of, based in fear, and it plays out, in so many kind of insidious ways. It's hard to put a finger on, but I've just become more aware of that difference between ego. Who's telling the story? Is it ego and fear, or is it love and connection?
Love the the thinking that those brain stories, that brain chatter, probably never goes away, completely. No. But it's being able to turn it down in the background like a radio. And it's just going, hang on, no, thanks brain, but no thanks. How did you deal with that ego or that brain story that was on your shoulder talking into your ear? How do you deal with that?
Through well, initially I didn't. The whole point, my whole kind of behaviour was to avoid that. But the more I kind of learned about human behaviour and psychology and spirituality, the more I understood that this was what was going on. And Joseph Campbell's really somebody who I think for myself and for a lot of people has helped put the human experience into context, not just over time in his work around studying mythology, but just looking at humans as being on this journey, the hero's journey. And he talks a lot about the cave, and in the cave, the cave or the darkness that we fear most holds the treasure that we seek. And this whole idea of like, well, shit, so maybe within those thoughts somewhere, if I didn't avoid them but kind of just explored them, they may not be as terrifying as I make them out to be. And so meditation was definitely a part of that, which for me was not about silencing the mind. It was just becoming aware of the thoughts that I'm having, so that I can then choose which ones I want to listen to. The other thing that is really important, has been really important for me of late, is just getting older and just putting things in perspective. I turned 40 a couple of years ago, and that was a time to just take stock of things. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I have spent so much time wasted on just ridiculous thoughts and behaviours that are all just, have just been based in so much fear. And I've missed out on a lot, and I look around me and I've got incredible friends, and I've got, this is where appreciation comes into it as well, and gratitude to provide some perspective. Incredible friends, wonderful life and lifestyle, and a family that I love, and so to just, and who love me, and so to reconnect with that has been really important as well, just to provide some context to everything that's going on.
So how did you take all that learning? How do you take that into an organisation, and when you're supporting people, and through their 120 people all on their journey, are there particular frameworks or strategies, or what works for you?
No, there's some similarities and there's some differences, but the similarities are that people are pretty much, there's some fundamental truths about humans that don't change from when you're 12 years old to 32 years old. And they are that we have fundamental needs that are, to be met. And if they're not being met, then we'll meet, in a sort of constructive manner, then we'll meet them in a destructive manner, one way or another. Yeah. And so I just sort of see, I kind of have this belief that workplaces can be a place where we come and not only do work, but do work that's aligned with who we are, what our skills and talents and passions and desires are. And that if we get that right, if we get that mix right, then it's going to be a great outcome for the company.
Yep.
It's going to be a great outcome for whatever the business is, whether it's B2C, the customers are going to appreciate that. And what we're noticing now is that we've got this freedom and opportunity to kind of do work that we love. We don't. It's not the 1940s and 1950s where we have to go to work and do a job just because that's the only option we have. We're limited. Now we can kind of do whatever we want to do. Well, at least there's a lot more opportunities to do it than there have been in the past. And so people are looking now to align their work with, a sense of purpose.
Yep. Right?
And that's what individuals are looking for. That's what the younger generation are looking for. So they should. What a great thing. We kind of, we look at them and go, how entitled it is that you want to go and do a job that that you love. That's an expression of your purpose and talent. So no, that's how it should be, right? That's
what was you at 19.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
And so you've got these, younger generation coming into workforce who this is what they want to do, and that's their expectation. I think workplaces now need to meet that. And so for a company, it's about identifying what you stand for. There's an operation that you perform. There's a service that you perform. There's how you do it, but why you do it, I think, is just as important now. And so not only are people asking why they're doing what they're doing, but companies are asking why they're doing what they're doing. And customers or consumers are drawn to companies that stand for something and that represent, something that, they believe in. And so that's a good thing, I reckon, because it's having a positive impact on the world. We're starting to question why we do things, which is good. So companies are asking why are we doing things, and then creating, a purpose statement or mission statement around that. They're defining a set of values that, and this is exactly what we've done here at Vino. We've, got a purpose, and we've got a set of values that we operate within. And so that attracts people who are aligned to that. And that I think our customers can, as well as getting a great wine at cheaper than anywhere else, they're going to do so. I mean, you're spoiled for choice in where you can buy wine, but people are hopefully going to buy wine from somebody that they relate to and align to with their their brand and their values and that sort of thing. So that's interesting.
Tell me what the values are for Vinomofo that you've been a part of creating.
So when I started, these values, we had a credo of 12 kind of, values, for want of a better word, and we sort of tightened it up a little bit just so that it was something that we could replicate at scale or communicate at scale so everybody knew what they were. So step up is one, care more, and that's just about the people we work with, our customers and the work we do. Keep it real, which is about just being as honest and integral as possible. Do some good, which is about doing something that's in service of not just yourself but the community at large, and have fun. That's the fifth value, which I think is really important as well.
That's excellent. Simplicity again, but it's all there, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've done a lot of research into this and spoken to a lot of people in other companies about values, and they are really important. They're really easy to kind of just get wrong. Not that you get them wrong, but they don't have the kind of impact that they need to.
So for people who do want to connect with you or learn more about Vinomofo, what's the best way for them to do that?
So Vinomofo is at Vinomofo on Instagram, Facebook you'll find us, and vinomofo.com in Australia, .sg and .nz in New Zealand. So Vinomofo is pretty easy to find.
Yep.
I'm pretty active on all the channels, and Twitter is at Vinomofo as well. Personally, Instagram should be where I spend most of my time, at mikey.ellis, and on Facebook too, but yeah, Instagram's where I tend to hang out, and Twitter a little bit as well.
And you get to see those beautiful bottles of wine. Thank you, mate. Thank you so much.
Thanks. You. Cheers, mate.
And yeah, thank you for joining us again on Unpack. As always, please feel free to connect, to sign up, to comment, to share, and we very much look forward to seeing you next time. Be kind to yourself, be kind to everyone around you, and yeah, thanks again, Mikey.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Thank
awesome.
you.